Jago, everyone.
Here.
Jago.
Welcome to minute 10 of our lovely podcast, Awake Minute by Minute, where we're discussing the movie The Life of Yogananda. Today we have a special guest, but before we introduce him, Mike and Chris, tell me, how was your energization? When did you last do energization?
I can say this one. It was yesterday. I did have a bit of a hectic start to my day today, but yesterday was the day. And do you know what? Actually, I can say probably the first time a few days ago I joined the SRF 6:20 in the morning energization technique through Zoom link, and that was actually really cool. And that was the first time I've done this in a while. So that was good fun to do it with other people, but yesterday by myself.
That's a pass, Chris. Well done. Mike?
Thank you.
For me, it was Saturday, like 2 days ago. And it was because I was doing stuff for uni and I was falling asleep. It was past midnight and I was desperately looking for ways to stay awake. So I was like, let's do the energization exercises now.
Oh, that's good. Did it work?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was really tired, but
you haven't slept since. Yeah.
That's right. I felt full of night. It really helped a little bit.
Come on, Mike. I've told you, like when I host, I'm going to ask you these questions. So you have to do every single one of your practices on the day I host. But anyway, you get a semi-pass as well. So it wasn't
semi-pass. That's good enough.
And you've been busy with study. You've been busy with studies. Well, let's without further ado introduce Hemond. Welcome, Hemond. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us something about yourself. Tell us how you came to this path.
Thank you, first of all, that I can join your crew today. It's a great honor and blessing, and to some extent. Mike introduced me to the project a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, wow, what a brilliant idea to go through, minute by minute to this fabulous documentary. So first of all, thank you so much for doing that. It's really, really cool. that's first up front. Yeah, how did I get to the path? I think, some people may call it a blessing, others may call it a challenge. I was born into an SRF family, so it comes, with, I think, after all, with lots of blessings, to be honest. And I've started actively to be on the path, I think in 1993 for the Centennial Convocation. And I mean, I could share a little secret here.
Go for it. We love secrets on public podcasts, especially.
I'm not quite sure if I should really do it, but anyway, since I started, the thing is that the reason I really actively started is because my parents, they wanted to go to the Centennial Convocation 1993, and they said, we can't let you, me and my sister, we can't let you stay at home alone in Germany. So if you want to come with us to this trip, long distance trip to Los Angeles, would be good if you could get into it a little bit further,
That's good. That's good parenting.
So,
that's good parenting.
Excellent.
That's clever.
So I decided, well, at least I should look into the autobiography of Yogi a little bit more in depth, and it's catched me right away. And since then, I really followed it, the lessons, the teachings, the Sunday services and meditations, quite regular. And energization exercises, I have a family, 3 children, a wife, all on the path, so to speak. You have to have your routine, otherwise you're lost in this world. And I guess what Guruji did for us, setting up this beautiful path with all these teachings and guidelines, it's a great help in daily struggle. So yeah.
Great. And how old were you when you read when you were in 93? How old were you then?
I was 16.
Oh, cool.
Yes,
very cool.
16.
And so tell us, when did you see the Awake film, and what did you make of it when you saw it?
Oh, I saw it actually in a cinema in Berlin. It was an interesting moment because we heard a lot about it, and I wanted to watch it as soon as possible. So I got the tickets, and I actually wanted to bring my wife with me, but she decided to stay at home with the children. We had 2 children at that time. And then the cinema was quite empty. And at first I thought, wow, I mean, not so many people attended. Sad, you know, I was expecting large crowds all rushed into the movie theater. But when the film started, when the documentary started, I appreciated it so much, you know, these quiet moments. Maybe there were 10, 15 people in a hall of, well, capacity maybe, well, I would have to estimate 150, 200 maybe. So really small crowd, but it was so, you know, it was so dense and so nice, and the vibration so high, and you could really feel how everybody was zoomed into it. It was really cool. I still have very good memories of the first time watching it. And oh God, don't ask me how many times I've watched it since. It was a couple.
That's great. That's great. Any more interrogation questions, Mike and Chris, for Hemond?
I just want to know, how long have you had your bracelet for? Everybody's got one.
Oh yeah.
For the very last time.
For the podcasters, Chris is talking about our Astral Bangle.
Astral Bangle.
You know, that's a good question. I think this one I have now for maybe 15 years. The first one I got in 1995 when I got initiated into Kriya. It was a present of my father, but this one I had 3 in total. They tend to break. I don't know if you guys have a similar experience, but even this one here, I don't know if you can. Well, yeah, there is. The copper one is, again, on one part it's gone. So I don't know, I think I have to get it.
It shows your karma, basically.
Really?
You're relinquishing your karma one bad at a time.
Mine is also version number 2.
Okay.
Already. So
Hemond, Mike? I know Mike used to take it on and off for football often, but Hemond, do you ever take it on and off, or do you keep it on?
I did it with the first one. You know, I stayed 6 months in Hidden Valley. That's a long time ago. And during the work process, you know, sometimes it fell off because I kept it here on the upper arm, and now I have it around my wrist. And so sometimes I took it off, but I figured out that the more often I took it off, maybe it's just the mind thing, the more,
things would happen.
The risk was too high for me from the mind that it would break even.
So the advice you'd give to listeners who have a bracelet is to try and keep it on, not take it on and off.
To be honest, I don't even feel it anymore. You know, it's
part and parcel.
My body.
But
go on, Chris.
Sorry, but I did have another question before we move on. How did you manage? I presume you had to manage to get your kids onto the path. How did you go about it?
Ooh,
great question.
Yeah.
You know, I think when I think of my own parents, how they did it with us, and my wife, she's also from an SRF family, from Sicily.
Nice.
And we both had the same experience in our childhood, and our parents never really put pressure on us in regards of meditation or praying or, you know, the entire path. They told us about Master and about all these cool things he did, and he's still doing. And so the Guru was always a part of us, of our childhood life. You know, I remember that my father always kept telling me when I board a plane, I should say Om Babaji Om. You know,
yeah.
You know, these things just stick with, right? And I think we just because they see us meditating every day, and they see us praying, and we do the lunch prayer together, or the evening prayer at the table for dinner. And and last year when we started to we don't do it regularly anymore, but when we started to have the online meditations from SRF, we also kind of meditated with the children. Sometimes they just fall asleep on our lap, and so it became quite natural for them. And,
that's awesome.
You know,
yeah, it's awesome. But like, I think Guruji talks about We haven't even started the minute yet. We're probably 10, 15 minutes in, but Guruji talks about, like, so I think some of the best work that we can do is work on the inner self through, self-realization, and we affect others just by, like, osmosis, by the field, and through means that we cannot see by our eyes, right? And that's awesome. That the kids fall asleep on your lap and do that in meditation. They're probably benefiting a great deal. Nice.
Yeah.
Hemond, you mentioned the prayer before food, lunch, and dinner. I think you said. Do you remember it? For listeners who don't know it, can you recite it for us?
Oh, we have a German one.
Oh, okay, I'll do the English one. Or Mike, do you want to do it?
I could.
No, let me let me do the
English the English long one.
Yep, go for it.
Let's see. Receive this food, make it holy. Let no impurity of greed defile it. The food comes from thee. It is for thy temple. Spiritualize it. Spirit to spirit goes. We are the petals of thy manifestation. Thou art the flower, its life, beauty, and loveliness. Permeate our souls with the fragrance of thy presence.
Great. Hemond,
Yeah.
Is that the same as your German translation one? And what's the shortened version, Mike?
I don't think the shortened version exists in German, though, so that's why I sometimes tend to do it in English.
No, we have one, Mike. Maybe you remember from the children's retreat that we used to have.
Lass deinen Segen über dieses Essen fegen. Yes. I love that one, actually.
Blessings. How would you translate that?
Yeah, let it blow over the food.
Blow over the food. Yeah.
That's right.
The short one is how does it start?
Give us food.
Yeah,
health.
Heavenly Father, give us food, health, and prosperity for the body, efficiency for the mind, and above all, thy love and wisdom for the soul. Peace. Amen. That's how that goes. So for those who don't do that prayer, I highly recommend it before food. It changes your culinary experience, does it not, guys?
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Right. With that, without further ado, let's go to the minute in question. Right. So we have the narrator speaking at the very start, and he says, this is Anupam Khera saying, he says, sometimes I used to lapse into the consciousness of my true spirit. Right, guys. Tell us your thoughts on that. It's quite a profound statement. It's something that's easily glossed over when you're watching the movie, but think about it. Sometimes I used to lapse into the consciousness of my true spirit. Has any one of us done such a thing or experienced such a thing?
I'm afraid not. I think this is I'm a bit envious of Guruji here, because he says it so casually, like a lapse into the consciousness of my true spirit, which I assume is the consciousness of his soul being one with God on this level, on interiorized. And if this just happens to you in and out, I mean, it happens to you because you are an avatar, right? It doesn't happen to you randomly. So I think I like that he says that so casually, but it must have been an interesting experience in his childhood when he was immersed in creation, in being incarnated, and then he suddenly has those lapses of being an omnipotent being, and that fading in and out must be an amazing experience.
Mm. Yeah, for me, whenever I heard it, it's amazing how powerful Maya really is, and Guruji talks about that, how you can get easily distracted, let's say, from Maya. He saw many visions in his lifetime, but then when actually he was living these things, they were so real to him, and he talked about them as essentially a dream. It's all the movie reel on God's screen. He talked about it that way. And for somebody as powerful as Yogananda, to almost kind of get wrapped up in life at times. You know, it kind of strikes me that way when he says he lapses into his true self. It gives me solace, actually. To be perfectly honest, it kind of gives me a little bit of solace hearing him say that, as well as inspiring. To your point, Mike, like I certainly haven't had that experience, but you know, I think we all would desire to have that experience, and hearing him say it and sharing it in such a sweet way is pretty awesome. But to me, you know, I think a lot of us, and we're going to talk about this later in the episode, about the Kali Yugas the Yugas. It's even hard to grasp, you know, and I can kind of understand what he's saying by the words, but to understand the depth of the significance is you know, maybe beyond me at this point in time, to be honest. But maybe Hemond, you have more insights.
You know, what you just said is so true. You know, I was just reflecting on it. What you said, that we take it so we take it first. At first, it sounds like a sentence. You know, he's just lapsed into the consciousness and so on. And the more I think about it, it is another sign of his of this greatness, which is just there. You know, and he's sharing it with us, and it is unbelievable, actually.
Yeah.
Just that simple sentence, you know, is not simple at all.
Yeah, it's like the way he talks about it is, Yogananda talks about Sri Yukteswar training him to be able to read the Bhagavad Gita and just interpret it through intuition. And you know, this word or this sentence that he has, you could logically break it down and say, okay, well, this means X, Y, Z, but intuitively, do you really know? And it's the knowing, and it's the truth that is, it's kind of there, kind of reaching for it. You know, it's inspiring that you want to reach for it. But yeah, he does it so subtly, so peacefully. I'd say there's no drama, there's no ego to it.
Yeah,
you know,
it's just there. It's pure wisdom, and it's wonderful to think about it. And it's starts this yearning, I should say, isn't it? That in a desire to get there and to join him.
Yeah, and to make matters more fascinating, this is him narrating as a child. So you can imagine, you can imagine from what state he was born in, let alone after his experience in cosmic consciousness, from which he never left, I suppose, from Nirupi Kalpa Samadhi.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, we're going to hear it pretty soon as to how that might be possible, in a sense, right? You know, how you could come into this life so enlightened. So.
Yes, I scoured the autobiography of a yogi for such experiences that he had he might have written about, and I recollected two, and I'll narrate them, unless one of you want to. Have you got the mic card, Chris or Mike?
Yeah, I can.
Mike, if you read the second one first. So we made a pilgrimage.
Sure. We made a pilgrimage to an ancient Srinagar temple dedicated to Swami Shankara. As I gazed upon the mountain peak hermitage, bold against the sky, I fell into an ecstatic trance. A vision appeared of a hilltop mansion in a distant land. The lofty Shankara temple in Srinagar became transformed into the edifice where, years later, I established Self-Realization Fellowship headquarters in America. When I first visited Los Angeles in California and saw the large building on the crest of Mount Washington, I recognized it at once from my long past visions in Kashmir and elsewhere.
So it would appear that when he goes into such states, not only is he no doubt in the state of bliss, one can only guess that level of bliss, but he also has visions of the past, perhaps, and the distant future, which is what he's kind of alluding to there, right? Yeah, so I like this section of the autobiography because it kind of feels right for the minute, because he's on in this minute is the young Yogananda, and he's like on some nook of Himalayan mountain and just looking out into the beautiful majestic scenery of the Himalayas.
Yeah, I feel like this is the essence of being in tune with Master, or being in tune with God, that then you will see what the right thing is to do with your life. And he kind of was constantly guided by Divine Mother in the right directions. And he went to Srinagar to see a beautiful temple, and she told him, by the way, you will one day be in America and have this amazing place there, and I'll show it to you now. So yeah, it's pretty great, right?
Yes, it is. Chris, any reflections, or you want to read the first my first example on the card?
Yeah, I can read them. Maybe we can reflect a bit more. So yeah, my second test was connected with the fact that just before I went upstairs to her room, and Craig, maybe you can.
Yeah, so this is the chapter. This is a chapter where he visits the Saint Teresa Neumann.
Teresa Neumann.
Yep. Yes, so he's about to go see her, and this is a description of what he says.
Yeah. So Teresa Neumann, for anybody who's listening or doesn't know, is I suppose, would you say herself a saint?
So she's a Christian stigmatist, or was. So yeah, you can read all about her in the autobiography in quite a epic chapter, I suppose.
Yeah, and Yogananda went and visited her and maybe a few others in his trip through Europe and India. So,
and he says this.
And he says this, just for context. So, I put myself into a yogic trance state in order to attain telepathic and televisional rapport with her. I entered her chamber, filled with visitors. She was lying in a white robe on the bed, with Mr. Wright close behind me. I halted just inside the threshold, awestruck at a strange and most frightful spectacle.
Yes. So he defines in the autobiography a bit later. He says he wanted to connect with her so he could experience what she was experiencing during during her own, Teresa Neumann's own trance, and why pilgrims used to come and see her. So so that's another state of his being able to go into that state, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I recall he was going there just to kind of see if it was true or not. Right? He had heard all these stories, and he kind of wanted to go there, and he kind of put himself into the trance. And maybe I'm making this up, obviously fact check me on this, listeners, but I'm pretty sure, he went there and he went into this state just to see if what was going on was real. And that was pretty cool to my mind, because, he had the mastery over himself just to kind of call people on their rubbish, but yeah.
Yeah, Hemond, please.
Mike, maybe you remember in 2004, I think we had a New Year's retreat where we both went to Teresa Neumann, to Connersreuth, and we had the privilege to meet also with the mayor of the town, who happened to be a young child when Guruji arrived in Connersreuth in 1935.
Yeah, he was so old, right? Yeah,
he was so old, yeah. And he shared with us his personal, moments when he saw that Ford car during the village, and how amazing it was for him to see, and then this automobile, and then a strange looking man with long hair was stepping out, and obviously he had no knowledge about who he was and what he had to do there and why he came, but just being a young boy, he had some memories about that. And Chris, what you said, yeah, that's what I heard as well. That I could fact check it for you now.
No, let's not. Mike, any reflections? How was that's quite interesting. You guys met someone who has in the flesh seen Guruji.
She's a
The
big
only person
deal.
that I've met is Mrilini Mata. Well, I didn't meet her. I saw her on the stage. So you guys are quite privileged.
Yes, I mean, she's Therese of Connersreuth is a big deal in Germany, especially in the Catholic scene, and in the state where Hemond is from, in Bavaria. She's like a national saint, kind of. And so when I also grew up in Bavaria for my first 6 years, so I got to hear about her a lot, and I think it also meant a lot to German devotees that they read about her in the autobiography of a yogi. And of course, you go there, and it's a very sacred place. She lived such a simple life. That she had like no luxury. She had this tiny little place there, but she was revered during her lifetime. There were some miracles happening around her. She was born blind, and then she regained her eyesight, and then she had those stigmatas, and then I can only imagine how when a bunch of Americans with an Indian Swami come by rolling into small town. That must have been quite a scene. Must have been a great experience.
In her trances, she used to experience the crucifixion. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And she was bleeding in the same areas where Christ was when he was on the cross. Yeah, the stigmatas. Yeah. Really,
quite a horrific to imagine such a scene, isn't it?
Yeah, and there is even something more to add. When Guruji came there, when he arrived in Connersreuth, she wasn't there at first.
Yeah.
So they came there, and then they were looking for her, and then the locals said, she's in Eichstätt, which is another city, a very small city at the Danube River, I think it is. Oh no, sorry, it's not at the Danube. It's another small river that becomes also that leads into the Danube at some point, and where she was together with this Catholic priest. Mike, do you remember his name?
No.
But there is a picture of him and Master and Therese Neumann. I think, isn't it also? I think that's the picture.
I think it's in the autobiography, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah.
Or we've actually, it's quite a popular image if it's not in the autobiography. Yeah. I think I recall seeing it.
Yeah, I think so too. So then later on they came back, maybe a day or so, and there's a funny story because they're the only SRF ashram outside the United States happens to be in Nuremberg. And during my, how should I say, not childhood, but during my student time, I studied in a city close to Nuremberg. And when we visited the ashram, we always try to figure out, which road the master must have taken to reach Connersreuth. And we always came to the same conclusion that he must have passed the property that now is the SRF ashram in Nuremberg. And we wondered if he would have stood by, looked at this property and thought something similar to what he said to Mount Washington, like thinking like, wow, at some point in the far future, I know I will have an ashram here for nuns, a Postland ashram. These kind of thoughts, I don't know, maybe they make sense.
Okay. May I take it to one romantic level state further? Perhaps he walked past, he liked the look of the building and touched the wall. And from that point forward, the butterfly effect led to that beautiful ashram being created.
I like that idea.
This is guys, this wasn't scripted, so I just as a tangent happened to talk about this Therese Neumann, and Hemond has got such beautiful experience of this example. Is what a fantastic play that master sometimes directs us for. So the third and final example I would like to share. I'm not going to share it myself. Sister Premamayee is going to share it because she shared this talk during the convocation in 2020. So let me just play that for you. So she's talking about when Master was a boy with his friend, and he would encourage his young friends to meet with his spiritual ambitions, I suppose. And this is what she says.
Deep into the night, the two boys meditated and sang devotional songs, filled with yearning. Guruji's face radiated a perceptible glow as he chanted songs and prayers to Lord Krishna. But toward morning, the other boy began to feel discouraged. Guruji said to his friend, "We mustn't give up. Concentrate more deeply. He must answer the call of our souls." After another period of renewed effort, his friend sighed dejectedly and said, "There's no hope. It's almost dawn. Let's go and get some sleep." But our Guru was filled with unshakable determination and faith. He said, "Even if I die sitting here, I won't move until God comes." Then suddenly, Guruji experienced the sweet ecstasy of the vision. He cried out, "I see him! I see Krishna!" But his friend couldn't see. So Guruji reached out his hand and placed it over the heart of his friend, transferring the beatific vision. Then tears of love and joy flowed from both boys. Humbly, they bowed to Sri Krishna. Bhagavan Krishna smiled and raised his hands in blessing. So we see here Guruji's deep love for Sri Krishna and also his spiritual determination. And we see how Lord Krishna ever responds to the call of our hearts, of our devotion, our yearning for God's presence.
Right. What a beautiful story. I think that's from Metta, isn't it? And yeah, so that's the third example I'd like to just quickly go over. What do you guys think?
And just her voice is like making you feel calm and interiorized, very peaceful. And the story is, I mean, it's about this determination that you need to see God. Like, I think I talked to Brother Muktimata one time, and she said, like, you can see God. You just have to mean business with God. You know, you don't play games. You have to go all the way. And I think that's an example of that. And then sitting next to Master, and he puts his hand on your heart. That's amazing. I would have liked to be there. I think that's a good visualization. You know, when you meditate, visualize Master sitting next to you, putting his hand on your heart. I think that's just an kind of a nice imagery of how the Guru is helping you to reach God.
Yeah, it reminds me of other stories of great saints that have come realized that it wasn't until the moment that they sat and said that they would, they weren't going to move until they knew God, and these stories, go around, and the principles really is the willpower, and like you said, Mike, to mean business. And so many times, personally, I can share, I sat there and thought, right, I'm going to sit here, and then, it's kind of getting late, and I'm tired, and actually I've got work in the morning, and all the bits and pieces kick in, and so often, we lack that fortitude, really. So for him to do it resolutely is such an inspiration. Yeah, it's an awesome story. So,
Hemond, any reflections?
Yeah, well, it reminds me of the two frogs in trouble, right? And I just wonder, honestly, so many questions come to my mind now since I'm sitting together with you guys. This is fabulous. I love it. Because you read all these stories, you hear it many times, so to speak, but you never really think about it. And now that we are sit together, and you have you just quoted this beautiful part from Metta. It's first time I get this connection in my mind. Well, that's pretty similar to what I just read sometimes for my kids. The two frogs in trouble. Determination. How important it is. Never give up. You never give up. And we know there is one monastic who's also having this as a mantra, and it's really cool and encouraging. Yeah, wonderful.
Which monastic are you thinking of?
I think he means Brother Achalananda, right? He
Yeah.
keeps saying, keep on keeping on, right?
Keep on keeping on, yes.
Exactly.
Yes, Brother Prafulananda told me that as well. I was
okay.
I was asking him about some troubles I was having in my meditations, and he just that's what he said. And I thought, wow, it just feels like Master saying to me directly. It was really beautiful.
I would, after all these years, I would almost say that it's one of the key how you say it, the key qualities you need to have on that path is to never give up. Doesn't matter what happens, it doesn't matter how frustrating it may get at some point. Doesn't matter. We just go on forward, and we'll reach the goal eventually.
Yeah.
Has anyone made this kind of effort that Master often made, where you sit down and you're like, I'm not getting up. God, gurus, I am not getting up till I experience something of your divinity.
We did something interesting once in the Vienna
I remember
meditation group. We made it was more like a meditation contest. You would sit down, you would sit down, and whoever can stay the longest wins. Kind of. It wasn't really like a competitive race, but that's what it turned out. You know how it is, right? You sit there, you can't move, and we ended up sitting there until late in the night. And I did not have a vision, unfortunately, but I don't think this is really the right way to go about this. But we were young and we tried stuff out.
And you never know, you never know. Maybe you haven't seen anything with your bodily eyes, but intuitively, I'm sure Master was always there, and the blessings you receive in these moments.
Yeah, you just never know, really, do you? So keep on going. I think one of my favorite, I don't know what if you would call it a saying or what you would say it is, but saints are sinners who never give up. And I just love that. I think that's so good.
Love it.
And we shared recently through one of the SRF members that God. It was one of the brothers, sorry, I can't recall the name, but somebody might actually know, and I copied him. He said that he wrote down a message that he put up on his mirror that he read to himself every morning when he was brushing his teeth. And it says, God loves me, his child, as much as he loves Krishna, Jesus, and his great saints. And I actually have this written here to remind me when I'm working, it's constantly sitting there looking at me. And it is such a key takeaway, isn't it? Like, persistence, don't ever give up. And Jesus, himself, and Krishna, and whoever else, these great saints, God loves you as much as he loves them. And they never give up, and they are where they are today. And I think Jesus, getting baptized by what is Guruji says was his guru in a past life, John the Baptist. And John the Baptist said to him, like, well, I'm not worthy to baptize you. You're Jesus Christ. You're realized. And he said, well, no, you are. And Yogananda taught us to kind of partner with him in the sense that we should see this as a holy eternal partnership with our guru. That through persistence we can achieve what he can achieve. And such a blessing, really. So there's so much. It's funny, like we kind of check ourselves every single week, like, maybe we're going to talk about for half an hour this week, but with every single sentence there's like infinite depth of inspiration to take. So
all right. Let's go to the next section. So now we have the next part of the narration, which he says, clear recollections came to me of a distant life in which I had been a yogi amid the Himalayan snows. Clear recollections came to me of a distant life in which I had been a yogi amid the Himalayan snows. So I think Master is very connected to this vision because he was always attracted to go to the Himalayas, wasn't he? There were so many stories and failed attempts of him going to the Himalayas and trying to go there when he was young, etc. So what do you guys think of past so some people try and force the past life analysis, and don't they? What do you think?
I think I've said it in the previous episode. I'll say it again. We've got many blessings, but among them is the ability to remember and the ability to forget. I'm pretty happy. I don't think necessarily. I'm not rushing into knowing my previous lives. I think I have everything that I need today. And whilst the ego flirts with the idea that sure it'd be great and fun and all the rest of it, it's something that I don't really want to mess with until it's gifted. If and when it might be gifted to me, that I need to know something, and it showed. But yeah, I mean, I know people who seers who might be able to tell you something, and somebody's even shared something with me, and it was very much a kind of, I don't really know think I need to know this, and I would hazard to say I think everybody here is probably in the same boat, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Mike?
Yeah, I it's probably not so beneficial to know your past lives, but Guruji had this really strong connection with the Himalayas, and it is said to be the place, after the Battle of Kurukshetra, where the Pandavas went, and it's also always the place where the great yogis are, where Babaji is supposed to be, right? And I can totally picture Guruji having an incarnation of being a yogi in the Himalayas. And I find it funny how he didn't have the karma to go there for so long. As a child, he was trying to go and he was not allowed to. And then it finally happened. And of course, then he had visions, and the past lives, they catch up with him, because I feel like this barrier that we all have that blocks us from seeing our past lives, it wasn't really there for him, because as an avatar, you can see everything.
Hemond?
Yeah, can only agree. I think probably also everyone at some point in his life had the desire to know a little bit about this past, but then slowly but steady probably also understood that also great knowledge comes with great responsibility, as some people say. And once you know what you did in the past, maybe that's also not for your benefit. Sometimes it's better to leave things as they are. And I think the master was probably also, he was so not attracted, that's not the right word, but I just remember that, isn't it even said somewhere that he wants to reincarnate in the Himalaya as a yogi 200 years after his Mahasamadhi? I don't remember correctly the quote, but there's something that I think I read somewhere that he mentioned that when he will come back, he will be again in the Himalaya. So I think this is a strong connection between him and the Himalaya. That is,
yeah. It was Sadhguru in this lifetime. I heard talk about when people talk about saints, in this kind of saintly path, that you immediately think, what rubbish! Like, they're just going to run off to the Himalayas and do nothing but meditate out there. And there's many different points to make on this, and one is pretty beneficial, I'd say, to humankind for that to actually happen. But the other one, to Mike's point, you can't just do that. It's not karmically kind of how do you say it's you don't have the bank balance, to be able just to go off and meditate as a mere human. We have many paths that we have to lead and to balance our karma before we can do that. I think that is for the very, very few and far between, and for Yogananda to be part of that ilk and to come back here. And there's many stories in the autobiography that we can mention. Actually, I can mention one now. Was when he Yogananda was young, as Mukunda. He was sick, and he was healed by looking at Liri Maheshai's picture, and afterwards he had visions of beings, and he asked them who they were, and they said, "We are the Himalayan yogis." And this was, after, or sometime after that, I believe, and his mother passed, and there was a message delivered by, I think it was his brother, who reluctantly kind of gave it to him. And it was that whenever Mukunda was there, sick, lying in sort of on his deathbed, when he had the vision, his mother made a note and said that your little face was illuminated, your voice rang with iron resolve as you spoke of going to the Himalayas in quest of the divine. And that is a pretty awesome experience to have recorded and delivered to by your mother through your brother.
True.
So he was always in touch. I don't think he ever really left the Himalayas in some respects.
Yes.
So.
Very nice. Yes. Then we have it's like a hazy image of the Himalayas, as I mentioned, and then there's also eyes that come into focus on the middle of the screen. That ocean scene with the birds that are there, and then we have this saying from Sister Premamayee, who we just heard, and she says he also had visions of seeing his guru. So you wouldn't know that was Sister Premamayee, but you do now because I played you her voice from Convocation, and I'd highly recommend you listen to her doing that 3-hour kirtan because it was really fantastic. But Sister Premamayee, let me tell you a little bit about her. She has been a Self-Realization Fellowship nun for nearly 30 years. She lives and serves at the SRF International headquarters in LA. So she's this, as Hemond says, her voice is absolutely beautiful. I think Mike said it. But her chanting voice is angelic, as I would describe it. So it's absolutely beautiful. But yeah, so let's go back to what she says. So she says clear visions of his guru, right? So, and we have a faint image of Sri Yukteswar in the background. What do you guys make of that nice little touch? That's the first time we see Sri Yukteswar in the movie.
Yeah. Well, first of all, those images of the Himalayas are beautiful. Like when I saw those, I was like, this must be one of the most beautiful places in the world. Then also, the day of our recording is the birthday of Swami Sri Yukteswar.
You can't make this stuff up.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
And lastly, I mean, there's a whole chapter in the autobiography about Guruji meeting Sri Yukteswar, and it was such a meaningful encounter, right? Like he said he had 1,000 visions of him before he actually met him. And then when he actually met him, his feet couldn't move. He was trying to go the other way, but he couldn't. He could only walk towards.
Go through that in very heavy detail, Mike, in a later minute. So.
All right. All right. Okay. I'm not going to spoil it all, but this is just one of the most meaningful things that happened, and I think this is, he makes such a big deal out of this because this is meaningful for us as well, because we find our guru, and then with loyalty and determination, we go all the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought it was awesome looking at it. It's actually a really cool picture. Again, unless anybody knows, where did this picture come from? In particular, because it just looks, it's like a smoldering intensity, isn't it? That he's just kind of staring into your soul, and when it kind of comes across on the mountain side, you can kind of feel his presence next to you. And I've always thought, Sri Yukteswar looks quite stern. He's the avatar of wisdom. Is that correct?
Yeah, Jnana Avatar. Yep.
An avatar of wisdom, and I just thought that experiencing what Yogananda experienced was a blessing, but damn, it must have been hard, because Yogananda talked about how Sri Yukteswar uprooted every thread of ego that he had left in him, and at times it was tough, and he looks like a stern but loving kind of guy, So yeah, it's awesome when I see this. I just get flooded with kind of emotion actually when I see this picture. So it's lovely for me.
Hemond?
Yeah, also from a technical point of view, I I just saw it a couple moments ago. This it always touches my heart, in my soul when I see these images and pictures merging or blurring into each other. I don't know the technical term for it, but I think it blurs into each other. It's fantastic. And then with the sound, it really wants you to be there as well and just melt in. And it's really well done and very nice and very touching.
Yeah, that picture of Sri Yukteswar is quite scary for me. As Chris mentioned, he's obviously got quite a stern. He must be. Well, we know he was quite a strict disciplinarian in the ashram. And I don't know, whatever. I just don't want to get on the wrong side of Sri Yukteswar.
Yeah, so he's a no-nonsense kind of guru. Yeah.
You can just imagine like your best and worst teacher, the one that gets the most out of you, when you were a child. And that's, for me, that's what that picture kind of reminds me. And whenever I see Yukteswar, or no, half the time, that's what I see. And then I'm like, oh no, let me finish my meditation to the full. Let me sit in silence for 15 minutes as I'm supposed to after the meditation. Stillness.
Guruji's, I think there's some of the songs that I chant is probably some of the more harsher words that I might ever speak. It's, you did not meditate, you did not concentrate. But he was Yogananda, or is so gentle, isn't he? And so soft, and his recounting of Sri Yukteswar is, he's really he was a razor blade, of action, which is awesome. I'm really, we talked about it in an earlier episode, that the lineage of gurus of SRF, like you can be affiliated with not simply just Yogananda, but all of them. They're alive and real. And I'm very, very drawn to Sri Yukteswar. It probably tells you something about my own discipline and the need of it. So
Nice.
Very cool. The next scene we see, so then it just gets back into the hustle and bustle of the pilgrimage that our two monks are taking. Brother Vishwananda and at the time Brahmachari, I forgot his name. Someone remind me.
Shekhar?
Yeah, Brahmachari Shekhar at the time. Yeah, who's now a brother. But yeah, so we see them in a cab or being driven. And so a nice touch, I thought. So the cab driver obviously must not, or the car driver must not have been SRF, but someone had put a picture of Yogananda on the dashboard. No doubt it was a director or the or one of the monks. But if you look, and this is quite typical of India, actually, they're usually, whoever your own lineage is, you pay the most importance to that lineage. And the car driver was no doubt a devotee of the Ramakrishna Paramahansa lineage, because he had a picture of him and a picture of Vivekananda and Sarada Devi and the Kali Mata shrine in Dakshineshwar temple. So he had that lineage there, and I thought that was quite a nice touch. So we have our monks talking and trying to, I suppose, get to the next place they're going to on their journey. Then we have an Indian lady carrying like 10 bricks on her head. That's again very typical of a construction worker in India. I don't know if you've been to India, Hemond, but have you been?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen Indian ladies without any PPE or helmets carrying bricks on their head in that way?
I have seen so many things in India. I have seen, when we traveled to the Himalaya, maybe I can share another, well, it's not really a secret, but the last travel that the now Brahmachari Tony did before he became a monastic, as an SRF monastic. And I don't know if you ever had the chance to talk to Brahmachari Tony in California. Yeah, Mike, you know him. We both studied at the same university, in Bavaria, and we were attending the same meditation group in Nuremberg. And the funny thing is that we had a pilgrimage to India, and we went on a hiking tour through the Himalayas and visited Babaji's cave and Varahat and all the places you need to know, so to speak. And we have seen a couple, and that was a running gag at some point. We saw a couple of ladies with big bunches of wood on their backs, and sometimes these how shall I describe it? It was more like a walking bush, so huge piles of firewood, basically, that you couldn't even see the legs anymore of the lady who was carrying it. And so we sometimes called it the walking bush or bushes, and it's the same thing with the bricks. It looks like in India, they are so practical at some point, and so tough and so strong, these women, great strength. And they do everything they need to sustain the family. And it's wow, fantastic sometimes to see. It makes you wonder what the men are doing in these families, but I don't want to get into that direction. Don't worry. But no, I'm quite familiar to some extent with the picture of women carrying big loads of not just like material things, but also burden, family responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and they do it with a lot of elegance.
Yeah, exactly.
Without showing any strain.
Yeah, the sari always fits them perfectly well.
Yep. Even once they're doing that heavy lifting labor, she's wearing a sari,
Yeah,
with dignity and grace.
Exactly.
Yes.
I being born in Northern Ireland and part of the UK my whole life, only really visiting parts of Europe. This has been a sheltered upbringing to some extent, but going to Brazil, it's maybe similar to India in some respects, that there's some construction work going on at my fiance's house, and they were bringing in bags of concrete. Now, me being willful idiot, ran up and said, "Let me help." And some of the guys were carrying it on their heads, and I looked at this thing, and I wasn't sure how much it weighed, but somebody plunked it on my head, and it turned out it was 50 kg. I'm probably about half an inch shorter, but I mean, there's a real skill, because the other guys were walking, with a bag even more on their head, and they weren't even, using their hands. So there's a real skill and elegance to it, just as you said there, Prem. When I looked at this lady, my spine I kind of had to stretch a little bit just from the memory of it.
Yeah. So let's go to the next section now, the last section. So we have a couple of blurry images. So we have footsteps, camera of people taking footsteps, and then it merges into boats on the river. Which is interesting, but I guess they're trying to convey a journey, perhaps hard work, determination, all that good stuff. But then Brother Vishwananda comes onto the shot, and he says, "Throughout the ages, there have been mystics who come with special knowledge that helps us understand our place in the universe. Yogananda was born at the dawn of the atomic age, when modern physics would shatter our most basic beliefs about the nature of the reality and pave the way for an ancient and hidden teaching to be received by many." Mike, tell us your reflections. You are an atomic guy.
Sure, yes. Some call me nuclear. No, no, I think that there's so much wisdom in what he's saying, right? Because when you look at we are at this time now, we came from Kali Yuga into Dwapara Yuga, and a lot of things have changed, as Brother Vishwananda has said, right? So we start developing all kinds of machines. We start noticing about ourselves that we are not just this body, but like in the last episode, Deepak Chopra mentioned, there's an electric field that surrounds our body and we can measure moods. Like we are essentially energy beings, right? In a material shell, in a material body. So that needs, with this being able, with our minds being able to understand this, now a new guru can come and explain things to us in this new vocabulary that we have learned in the past like 300-400 years. And it kind of moves us to the next level. It has a lot of consequences as well. I feel like the things that you needed to do in Kali Yuga to get ahead spiritually, they are not enough anymore now in the age of energy. We need to be more aware of our own energy, and it all becomes a bit more subtle. And all this is kind of in those 3 sentences that Brother Vishwananda says. That's all in there basically. And I don't want to talk too much about the yugas, but this is basically the kind of thing that kind of kind of explains why Guruji had to come now at this time, because we are in a new time, and so this is why we need everything explained to us again badly. Yeah.
Hemond?
It's about, yeah, I'm nodding, and it's basically this particular time of transition, isn't it? And we can be so thankful that we have him, or have his teaching, and him as well, obviously, to help us to get into the next phase of this cycle. You know, Dvapara Yuga, all these changes. And I sometimes, when you look outside the window, literally, sometimes even, you can still see some reminiscence from the old ages, and now we're in the higher age, in a higher age, and still, you know, this time of transition. Sometimes it feels like we're not yet completely through it. I don't know what the overlapping years, Mike, you probably know much better about that than me. You're nodding as well, cool. And yeah, no, it's, well, for me, when I heard that from Brother Vishwananda, I thought, wow, it's so good. Also a good reminder how important it was that Master came during these days to help us, you know, as a mankind, to uplift ourselves by practicing the teachings, doing the Kriya. My goodness, don't even want to think about how life would be without
Chris?
Yeah, it's a pretty cool, pretty cool sentence, and I think really, you know, to give it its full credit, you would probably spend like an entire podcast or multiple just trying to get into it. And if anybody hasn't read the Holy Science book by Sri Yukteswar, I mean, that's something you could probably spend a lifetime studying, and it talks about it. And you know, I highly recommend anybody to jump into it.
Did you read it, Chris? Because I come from an engineering background, and I tried to read it, and I gave up after about 3 pages.
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, I did.
Oh,
And
good.
probably my I don't know. I've got an ability to kind of glaze over the more technical parts. That's probably what got me through it. No, I think like you can get super technical and read into it and study it. And I think one of the devotees that in London did just that. He's actually writing a book on the book, you know, to kind of break it down and study it. So it could be a lifetime. And I think what's really awesome, what Mike just said, we're seeing the transition, you know, before our eyes, so to speak. And there's, I'll just read out this paragraph in the book, you know, about 1600 AD, William Gilbert discovered magnetic forces and observed the presence of electricity in all material substances. In 1609, Kepler discovered important laws of astronomy, and Galileo produced the telescope. And in 1621, Trebel of Holland invented the microscope. About 1670, Newton discovered the law of gravitation. In 1700, Thomas Savery made use of the steam engine to raise water. And 20 years later, Stephen Curry discovered the action of electricity on the human body. And we're just discovering, as humankind, we're discovering more things about ourselves and about nature that takes it away from the gross understanding of material. And that is all we are, the human body is flesh. And this Newtonian way of thinking, it's evolving into the more Einsteinian way of thinking that everything is energy. So it's a real beautiful transition that's happening. And it's choppy, I think, the Hemond's point. But I think there's it said in 1899, on completion of the period of 200 years of Dwapara Sandhi, the time of mutation. I think that might be the transition time.
Okay.
There might be 200 years of that. Is that right, Mike?
But it's also over now. So where's
it's over?
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully 10,000 years of peace and transition and love.
Yes.
That's something to look forward to. Do you know, when I read this, I don't know if I can throw that into even a short conversation here. It made me think of inevitability in some sense. And, Sri Yukteswar talks about how there simply are beings that transcend time, and they tend to kind of break this cycle of sorts. Reincarnation itself is a cycle. But the cyclical nature of how the universe works like clockwork, essentially, and how that, you go towards the grand center and away from the grand center every 12,000 years and ascending and descending. That is, to me, somewhat restrictive in a sense. Like, how does that actually work? Are we doomed to kind of fall into, ignorance again? And, I'm not keen to do that personally, but it just really kind of scratched my head for a while. That probably got me more stuck in all the technical stuff, the more philosophical questions.
I kind of feel like that's a good point, because I feel like transcending those cycles is the only way out of them. Because I often see people getting excited when they see that we're in an ascending age. But also we are in this 24,000 year cycle. So within our lifetime, we will only see so much of it. And some people have really high hopes for our life, for the world getting exponentially better. But it's more like a organic kind of growth, I'm afraid, that we're into. And if we want to have exponential growth, then we have to work on ourselves. That's the way out. It's not waiting for the yuga to get higher.
Yeah.
I heard one monastic, or actually, it was a monastic. He said that the higher age that we are longing to, we have to create in ourselves. And so we can have not just like a Dwapara Yuga, we can have a Satya Yuga, a golden age right now, when we start to create it in ourselves. And I really thought about it. And I think it's cool. It's a cool thought. Because at the end, it's about you and me, you and us. We are all together. We can start treating each other in a good way and changing the world, starting with ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes not.
Yeah. The description, I agree with there. And the description of the spine being, is it a reflection of the universe? Is that how it's sometimes described? It, the spinal cord and this column, that is your universe in a sense. Like, this is for you to work on through yoga and practice. Yeah. So don't need to wait. Thankfully, 5,000 years you can do it in this lifetime. And maybe to that point, just to tie this in, maybe to the practice of Kriya Yoga. This is the cyclical advancement, let's say, of burning seeds of karma through Kriya Yoga. And, you guys can maybe tell me more about a minute of Kriya Yoga is worth, how many lifetimes, or how many, there's some kind of mathematics.
One breath is 1 year's natural spiritual unfoldment.
There you go.
One Kriya breath.
So we're kind of living in some kind of mathematical algorithm that you can kind of supersede in some sense. Yeah.
Then it's a very lovely mathematical expression he's put in there. Something like so a few hours of practice of Kriya equates to 100 years of natural spiritual involvement of something crazy. Or was it more than that? 1 million years, wasn't it? 1 million years.
Million,
yeah, 1 million years. Yes.
a natural evolution would be 1 million years in total. If you would just have a natural evolutional.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you practice correctly. Yeah.
Is that with or without energization, do you reckon, Mike? Hemond, did you do your energization this morning?
I did.
Yeah.
But you know, I have to also admit, energization exercise is one part, but then you have also well, I don't know if we can go into details.
No, we can't. Yeah, we can't.
Kriya.
Yeah.
But you know that Kriya comes also with some
Yep.
extras, you know, and that's sometimes a little bit, you know, I don't want to say I do it every day.
Right. I just want to touch on the last line that he said, which was ancient and hidden teachings to be received by many. So pave the way for ancient and hidden teachings to be received by many. And I thought that's an interesting line, and perhaps a good one that we can conclude upon. So we've gone through this crazy time of COVID this last year, and received by many has become has a whole new meaning now, doesn't it? So before, in this context, he's obviously talking about the science of Kriya and how it was handed down, but SRF has gone through a very vast transition in how it now engages with things like social media and YouTube, and how Brother Chidananda, who is going to be introduced in the next minute. He wasn't the president at the time, but he is now, and how how the organization and how the dissemination of our teachings have changed. Mike, do you want to reflect on that?
I feel like this kind of how should I put this? What do you mean exactly?
So, for example, online lessons. There's apps, and there's an app now. Not only have they done away with the crazy typewriter written lessons that we used to have, which I still have and I'm doing, but they've gone to apps. Lessons on apps, and they've gone before we have to buy a DVD to hear a monk talk now, and the whole convocation last year to go meet a monastic, you'd have to go to one of the 3 places where there's an ashram or in the world. But now online, every single day there's an online meditation center, for example. There's how many meditations in how many different languages?
I think it's like 5 to 10 languages, right? That they do meditations in online, so and different time zones as well. So
so in that context, received by many has. I just thought it was quite nice how we've changed, and we've really used, something that's perceived negatively, i.e., COVID, around the world as a springboard, really.
It definitely made the world a smaller place, right? And it definitely kind of, I feel like remote attendance in events and in work, this was always an option. But now that we have been forced to doing this for a whole year, I feel like this has been pushed onto us a bit more, and it kind of helps us to overcome space a little bit. When you live not in one of the big cities, a lot of people, they choose to live in the big cities just to be in the middle of the buzz, right? And during COVID, there was no buzz. All the buzz was online. You had as much buzz in the countryside as you had in the city.
The buzz was killed.
The buzz, exactly. Yeah. And then you kind of felt like in this sense, it was a great equalizer between people. And now when you take this away again, I feel like maybe some lasting changes will remain, hopefully. I mean, I love the timing that Brother Vishwananda had with bringing the online meditation center. Perfect. And then we were ready to have an online convocation. And I feel like those are all things that they cannot take away anymore now. Now people gotten used to it, and they reach so many people in so many places.
Yeah. Hemond?
Yeah, I think I'm a split personality on that question. On the one hand, I see all the advantages, as you just described. And on the other side, I terribly miss our meditation services at our group. And having retreats where you can hug a person, where you can really meditate together in person. That is something that, yes. So that would be my take on that.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting, because obviously we in SRF we place a lot of emphasis with fellowship.
Yeah.
With our practices and meditating together. And I think Yogananda uses the example of a bit of coal, when it burns, when it's in the fireplace with other coal, it will stay warmer for longer, but when it's out by itself, it distinguishes quicker. And so that's true also for our combined effort in meditation when we're together, and that's that collective energy. And obviously no doubt it is super important. Chris, what do you think?
I would upgrade you there, Priyank, to say like battery cells, rather than like together, like we've got such a stronger charge. And sitting in London, SRF was my first experience really of group meditation, and looking back on those days was fantastic. I say those days like they were that long ago. They weren't really, but you could really feel the presence for good and bad. You've got people coming in after work on a Tuesday in London. The minds are busy, and sometimes you pick this up as well. So it's definitely a new thing that we've all had to come to terms with due to COVID. And back to the previous minute, we were talking about, in one hand you kind of have the autobiography of Yogi, another one your mobile phone, and hopefully you use that technology for the purposes of what we're doing today. So yeah. So yeah, but my take on it in general is just balance, really, and all too often I probably tilted one way more than the other with technology, but yeah, it's
right.
positive.
Thank you. We've vastly overstretched our time limit today. We're getting to the limit of the Zoom cloud recording. So does anyone have anything more to add?
I just have something. It's kind of going off the beaten topic, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But the Himalayan mountains is really significant to me. Just to go back to that, and I know there's certain studies these days about the energy that's actually generated through mountainous areas and how that affects the surrounding areas. And there's something termed Ormus energy, and essentially it's really pulling energy in from they say like black holes, and there's a whole study on this that really grasped my curiosity, and it just clicked, reading certain studies on this and why typically you would find saints and yogis in the mountains, in the Himalayan mountains. It's because the energy is really rising up, and it's this rising of energy that helps us work through the rising of energy in our spinal center. So there's a whole bunch of stuff there, and if you have a curious mind, that you could really go and research it. And just to show for fun, anybody watching, I actually have my own little mini mountain thing here that actually generates certain type of energy itself, which helps in meditation. So you can bring the mountains to you in some sense.
Very cool.
It's not just Himalayas though, is it? Even in Christian mystics, mysticism is also associated with mountains, aren't they? Like, for example, if you go see St. Francis of Assisi's caves, they're up in the mountains, aren't they? In like a remote part that no one would think to put a home, and he's put a home there. And last year I went to Greece. There's a place called Meteore, and that's where it's Christian mystics, ancient Christian mystics would go and hide out on this top of these cliffs, and it's absolutely, Google it, they look absolutely stunning, but they literally, to get down, there's a wrench and a rope. You can't, there's no one's getting up through a normal walk or anything. So imagine, they did long periods of fasting, etc. So there's I think all spiritual paths somehow have got a very deep connections to mountains and seclusion, especially.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's probably more significance as we kind of travel through these years to come with that, right? And there's node points and the energetic fields around the planet. And yeah, it's an awesome subject, and this is just one of the part of the fascinating elements of spirituality is that it really opens up the universe to us.
Right. Any more, Mike?
Yeah, I was wondering, I was just thinking, because I'm from Austria, we have the Alps. I was thinking of our alpine saints. Can't think of one right now.
Yeah, they're the financial ones. Yeah.
Switzerland, Mike, Switzerland.
Switzerland, yeah, that was Brother Klaus, right?
Mother Klaus, exactly.
Yeah, he was that side of the Alps, that's right.
Wrong side, you said? What?
No, that side. There's no wrong side. No. We're all friends here. Yeah.
No duality here, yeah.
Hemond, any more from you?
I've been so happy to be able to join you guys. Thank you so much. Yeah, great conversation and nothing more to add. I mean, there are plenty of topics, but I think that could be stuff for endless further. Probably.
Well,
pyramid, you shared, Chris. That alone is a topic. On Tesla, California. Wow. UFOs. Ooh.
We'll talk offline.
Yeah, so we're going to carry on this conversation, talk about UFOs and pyramids and their links offline. But no, Hemond, thank you very much for joining us. You've been an absolute star. For those who can't see Hemond and listening to the podcast, Hemond has got a beard that's bigger than his whole face. So he looks like one of those mystics that we talked about, and he has certainly given us enough food for thought in this podcast. So hopefully you'll join us again one day, Hemond.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll call that a day there. Take care. Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
See you next time.